Hi everyone. Welcome to this webinar today. My name is Anita and I'm going to show you thyroid sufferers out there how to turn your stress into strength and start living again. You know, I'm so excited and thrilled by this webinar and I thank you all for coming. And with that said, we're just going to jump straight into it. But before we do, I just want to let you know that there will be a question and answer time at the end, so please stick around. And please remember that no question is a silly question. Have your pens and papers ready. You might want to jot down some things that you may want to ask, and I'll go over them. This condition affects family members, relationships, friends, sisters, brothers, so it'd be good for you to share in that. Okay, so let's move into it. First of all, there's a disclaimer. Any information we provide is not medical advice. It is merely information and not advice. If you need medical advice, you should consult a doctor or other appropriate medical professionals who specialize in this field. So, this webinar is for you. If you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, and as you know, there are many types of tiredness, like burning the candle at both ends. However, if it's an ongoing event and starting to feel like you're dragging continually, it's time to take notice. Waking up tired and unrefreshed is another indication. Or perhaps you find your immune system is prone to colds, flu, viruses, and especially allergies, 1 in 4 in Australia. So if your hormones dictate you, do you feel your life is based around your cycle? Are they being erratic and unpredictable and often heavy? Or you find yourself tired at bedtime but feel restless and find it hard to sleep? Or your cholesterol is up? Or you notice your hair's falling out when you shampoo? Or maybe you start gaining weight that's really hard to lose and feel bloated as the day goes on? What about if you're feeling that life is an existence instead of an experience? You can feel flat as a tack even if life has been kind to you and not understand why. Or you find your moods shift quickly from anxiety to feeling blue or depressed. Or maybe you just feel lost and confused, like your mojo is missing. If you're having difficulty explaining symptoms or just sharing, you may try to share with friends or family and everyone says you look fine, but frustrated you learn to keep quiet. Or finding a professional that will have the time to explore and listen to your symptoms. If you have a family history of thyroid like goiter or nodules or surgery, 85% of thyroid problems are genetically acquired. Even if you know about the family history, there are many disguises like diabetes, cardiovascular problems, bipolar, breast cancer, just to name a few. So you may not even recognize that you have a thyroid problem. What about taking random supplements or diets in the hope of fixing it, but nothing works? You try products, fad diets, you doctor shop, you take advice to the point of giving up because you just really feel discouraged. Sure, you find things may work for a while, but then symptoms will return. Are you having problems focusing or being forgetful? Some days does it feel like it's hazy in your brain and it takes a lot of energy to think, which is draining. It's almost like it's being lost in a fog. Or your recall is suffering and you forget things easily, like misplacing the car keys or not recalling common names. Or maybe you've just tried numerous weight loss strategies and keep failing, finding yourself avoiding foods, eating little, exercising max, and nothing shifts. I'm going to share with you now what led me to this webinar. So from the time birth, I was born into chronic disease, and I always yearned to be healthy and to have energy all my life, even as a child. I was really over being medicated because it didn't heal and it had so many bad side effects. So I developed a passionate interest in all aspects of health, from the cosmos to nature cure. And finally, I got more confidence because I started getting results in my health. That was really exciting. So here's what I've done. I decided I wanted to learn nutrition and iridology. So I ended up studying naturopathy, which was absolutely fascinating. I then became a yoga teacher simply because I went to an 8-week breathing workshop 20 years ago. And I did not know at that time it was yoga breathing techniques, but since then I've never experienced asthma, bronchitis, or heavy colds ever again. And so I also use the yoga exercise to repair my joints from arthritis and better my mobility, and also to learn relaxation techniques to deal with stress. And then I learned Ayurveda. That taught me the power of healing food, mind, and body, and I overcame a lot of my rheumatoid arthritis simply using the system. This actually surprised me at the healing power of food. Then I studied and specialized in thyroid pathology to read my own tests so I could be the one in control. Have you ever pondered on the fact when you leave the doctor, were your blood tests really read correctly? Were they scanned? It's really hard to know. So this is what I've done. I've worked in hospices and counseling and providing nutrition. I did my apprenticeship managing a chiropractic clinic on the coast. I was a director, a nutritionist at an acupuncture clinic in Lund. I worked with Lifeline with cancer programs to help people live a better life. I took yoga class into community and I ran free classes for 12 years teaching stress management. I also took yoga into the drug rehab, and then I studied postgraduate yoga for backs, which I love to treat as well. I've also done weekend. This is a lovely little house that I rent out, and we just enjoy the bush, and there's a lake nearby, and from that lake we actually get the most beautiful mud, and as you can see, one of my students is having a very, very natural mud pack. So my successes were meeting these two doctors because it meant actually saving my life. On the right-hand side, you don't see the doctor. His name's Dr. Turner. But what he did design, excuse me, was called a Thyroflex machine. And this Thyroflex machine, you see there's a rod on the arm and there's a sensor on the hand. And what it does, it actually measures the reflex time from the nerve that goes up to the thyroid and back down again, and will also go up to the brain neurons, and just make sure your spark plugs in your brain are okay. And it will also work out how many calories your metabolism is burning. I've learned to really trust this machine, but this is what diagnosed me. And then also, once I'd got my diagnosis, doctor actually came to my house to test me. Then the next thing I had to find somebody else who could give me more guidelines. So Dr. Brownstein was an orthodox GP turned into a thyroid health advocate because he actually cured his father of heart attacks by treating his thyroid. He's treated 7,000 thyroid patients, so I used his approach and research amidst many, many other doctors. So I'm very grateful to these two. Other things I've done now that I'm finding my voice is I talk at ABC morning shows, I talk at Theosophical societies, you really can't shut me up right now, expos and venues. There's a picture of me giving out a little venue, just a talk about alkalizing yourself, and I cannot wait just to share with you the information I have discovered and learned and what's really going on with thyroid health. It will shock you. So we're going to start with a little case study. So as you can see, this is Terry. Okay, she came into my clinic well over a year ago. Can you see her face? Can you imagine living life like this 24/7? Can you imagine going to work, traveling on the train to the city as she does? How would you feel? So when I met her, she arrived in tears and frustration. She tried everything, and she couldn't even sleep for all the hives that were itching. She was irritated by everything and her relationship suffered. And she limited her food intake because of possible flare-ups that were happening all the time, as you can see. 10 months at the specialist, lots of cortisone, lots of medication. When she arrived here, her hair was falling out. She had lethargy, afternoon slump, no energy and headaches. So the Thyroflex diagnosed hypothyroidism, which was confirmed by blood tests. Terry did a 12-week program with me, a step-by-step process, because we had to take out some of the medications to clean, reinstall, and then restore. Her colleagues, interestingly enough, were so cynical and not very supportive, but still she was determined. And so 12 weeks later, here she is happy, better relationship, more social, traveling, she knows her guidelines, simple maintenance, comes in to check her thyroid function every few months. This is a real case of from stress to strength and being open to change. And now we're going to meet Kay. Her picture cannot be displayed for security reasons. Her words to me was, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. Her words, continual flus and viruses. She just kept packing on the weight. She was tired of taking antibiotics. Doctors were saying nothing was wrong with her. Eventually she became very antisocial, and at the end of the day, no energy to make dinner, so relied on takeaways. Once again, we tested her on the Thyroflex machine, and she showed that she was hypothyroid and also had Hashimoto's, an autoimmune disorder, which the blood test confirmed. Kay did a 12-week program to guide her and rebuild her immune system and deal with her virus. It was a clean, install, and restore. Now she's thinking of retirement. She is taking desiccated thyroid. She's feeling so much better. She has her life. No more takeaways. Wonderful. And here's a quote from a doctor I'm sure we know quite well. Hypothyroidism, or an underactive thyroid, affects 1 in 70 women and 1 in 1,000 men, according to the NHS, National Health Scheme. But it can be a tricky disease to diagnose and treat. Dr. Michael Mosley of Trust Me I'm a Doctor asks if sufferers are slipping through the net. Believe me, they are. Dr. Brownstein says thyroid issues are misdiagnosed, mismanaged, or missed altogether. And this is from his book, Overcoming Thyroid Disorders. Wonderful man, very earthed. And with that said, I'd like to take what I've learned and discovered and share with you the 5 steps to thyroid health. So step 1, we're going to take a little journey, a little discovery tour, and discover the source of all health. To have awareness around this butterfly, it has resounding effects on every part of your body. Then we're going to see what to look for. We're going to learn the difference between what are signs, what are symptoms. And then we're going to talk about training your doctor. We're going to learn a little bit about blood panels, and we're going to learn to be a little bit more assertive, and we hopefully going to train our doctor. Not hopefully, we will. And then we're going to look at triggers that actually stops the thyroid working and what sort of outside influences. And then we're going to talk about 3 pillars of health. There's actually a lot more, but for the sake of this exercise, we're only going to cover 3. So let's have a look. What is a thyroid? So first of all, I think it's located on your lower neck, and for men it's the Adam's apple. This thyroid belongs to a family of 8 glands, including the pancreas. So right now, I want you just to reach out to your throat, and I want you to just to go palpate, touch with your fingertips very sweetly and gently, and just feel. You really should become familiar with this little gland. Can you notice any swelling or any tenderness, or do you have trouble swallowing? Do you think you may even have a thyroid collar? Soon we will discover what a thyroid collar actually is. So let's just talk a little bit about this exciting little gland. This is the engine room of your whole body. Nothing can function without the thyroid. It's a control panel. It's the size of a credit card and the same width. Its chemical is so potent, it only puts out a teaspoon of natural thyroxine a year. And inside this teaspoon, there's 4 types of thyroxine, which goes T1, T2, T3, and T4. What we mainly concentrate on is T3 and T4. So the thyroid is in charge of your brain, your thoughts, your heart function, your feelings, your performance, your muscles. It's this chemical that makes us fat or thin, warm or cold, fires up or slows down the factories in the 70 trillion cells in the body, including the brain hormones, the heart chemicals, rebuilding muscle and movement. Even skin relies on it. Hair growth absolutely depends on it. Every hormone activity is directly involved with the thyroid. Nothing in the body can function without this. Small but very mighty, and it's the queen of all. I'm going to show you another case history. This is what happens when you don't get diagnosed. So this is my case history. You'll notice at the top, I've only just listed only a few. This has happened over the last, possibly since I've been born. And so what's happened is That's just a few of the signs and symptoms, but there's too many to mention and they all have to do with thyroid. However, through study and research, I overcame many conditions. However, still I had a nagging feeling that as good as I felt, there was still something not right. In 2011, I had a lot of stress and I arrived back as I was living in Sweden and I assumed that my chronic fatigue had returned. By 2012, though, I developed super hyper anxiety and could not leave the house. I became breathless walking to my letterbox. I could hear my blood pressure actually surging in my neck. My heart started enlarging so much it was pushing my ribs outwards and it was really painful. I had a rapid heartbeat with palpitations and my skin actually tore like tissue paper. My speech slowed. I couldn't even work simple instructions like paying for groceries. I got lost to teach my own yoga class or find my way home, and this actually caused me so much more anxiety and stress. And on top of that, I was so depressed, almost suicidal. I could not explain it. I was very scared, and I just did not know where to turn to. Even though I had been to doctors, still no one had listened. I really lost hope. I despaired. Daily and for weeks on end, I just wept in despair. Doctors told me nothing was wrong. It's depression. And stress pills were offered. Your heart's fine. My hair fell out. I aged rapidly. Those bruises that you saw on my eye was just from walking into a door because your coordination goes out when your thyroid is out. Another doctor said I had a viral. I just got so fed up. My life force was slowly ebbing out of me and I felt like I was slowly dying. A colleague sent me a notice about a Thyroflex and its accuracy. And I don't know why, but I contacted Dr. Turner in Arizona. Divine synchronicity, he was due to come to the Gold Coast. He even came to my house because I couldn't leave it. I blew out the scales of the machine. And he explained that I had autoimmune disorders and possibly increasing the chances of developing Alzheimer's as my brain was very inflamed. However, help was on the way. He gave me a thyroid panel to get tested and then recommended a scan for my thyroid. Do you know what? Finally I got a diagnosis. I was actually so happy that it really wasn't in my mind after all. The discovery was that I had several autoimmune diseases. What's an autoimmune disease is where the body gets confused, the computer of the mind gets confused, and the body starts actually eating away at your thyroid tissue until it's destroyed. So I had several diagnoses here. I had Hashimoto's and Graves. I had thyrotoxicosis, thyroiditis. I had nodules. They suspected hot and cold, goiter, and I was hypothyroid. I was hypothyroid. Oh my goodness, what a cocktail. Now I had to deal with it. The local doctor, once seeing my tests, called me to hospital saying my heart would rupture and I could go blind if I did not instantly get onto medication. The doctor wanted to biopsy, radiate, and possibly take out my thyroid. I actually refused, and he told me that I would possibly die as I was an irresponsible patient. But my vitality was so low, it really was not for me in my state. But the tough keep going. I found a doctor in the States who Dr. Turner had put me on to, who I work with now. I researched, I took my own basal temperatures as well as a reliable test. I researched many things and with her help my heart started restoring. I had hope and I've been restoring ever since. Now I'm not still perfect, but mostly I'm really terrific. Life is good. I have energy. I sleep well. I have been re-educating my brain over the last 3 years, learning my stress triggers. I play badminton, I do martial arts and stand-up paddling. And I do appreciate doing a good day's work with still energy to spare at the end of the day. I did get referred to a local specialist, but he showed me to the door once I expressed using alternative desiccated thyroid, which was quite fine. At my worst and my life ebbing out of me, I really pondered on how many people may be suffering or having heart attacks or brain problems that were misdiagnosed. You know, in a strange way, I found my purpose, to inform others and find ways to make life easier to those suffering. It's been a long and hard journey, And now I'm finally finding my voice to share everything I have discovered. And this is me today. My life and brain are even better than before. Yep. And my purpose is to offer easy, simple solutions for great thyroid health. Stress to strength. So, what do we need to look for? Let's see. Perhaps you wake up in the morning feeling okay, but fatigue creeps on you at lunchtime. Or your belly gets bloated and irritated as the day goes on. Or you really crave sweets, salt, or carbs. You find yourself not functioning as well as you should, or you feel so pooped it makes it difficult for you to perform well at work or recreation. When you add in mood changes or grouchiness, you may find it hard to maintain normal family and friend relationships too. And stubborn weight that just will not shift. This is what to look for in a physician. The superior physician helps before the early budding of disease. The inferior physician begins to help when the disease has already developed. I see a lot of blood tests and there's indications of thyroid disease really happening, but the doctor has told the client, wait until it gets really bad. No, I believe we should be proactive. Right, now we're going to see what is the difference between signs and symptoms. So this is good for you to know. Signs can physically be seen on the human body, and the body reflects the inner landscape. Whatever is happening inside of your body is happening on the outer shell as well. Looking at your nails might have corrugation, you might have rashes and itches, your hair might be falling out or look really limp. You might do what I did and have bad eyelid lag or shortened eyebrows. Symptoms are the things that you feel. You may feel weak all the time or have headaches or feel tired and weary or just simply feel just really flat. So here's some signs and symptoms to look for. There are about 160, so I've tried to really keep them concise. Things are physical like sore wrists, a thyroid collar, and I'll show you a picture after this one. Things like ovarian cysts, fibroids, endometriosis, shortened eyebrows, breast lumps, difficulty swallowing, hair fallout, skin issues, excessive bleeding. Symptoms can be celiac or IBS, lots of allergies, low immunity, depression, fibromyalgia, brain inflammation and confusion, continual headaches, palpitations, and rapid heartbeat. So we're going to have a look what a thyroid collar. Now this is a little 5-year-old that came into my, this is how this is being affected. Example of a 5-year-old and an adult thyroid collar. Now in the chart that you can see on the left, you can see there's a line that runs across from the left to the right, and there would be another line just lying underneath that, and in between there's a swelling. Now that's called a thyroid collar. I've got Shoni here. Hers isn't so obvious, I think because she's stretching it up, but once again, have a look in the mirror and just make sure, because what we do is we see it every day, we just become used to it. Let's move on and see how we can train our doctor. This is what my poor doctor now does when he sees me. It's like, oh, here she comes again. So have you ever had the experience of hoping to find an explanation and then to be told that nothing is wrong? Then you start to question yourself. Maybe I am imagining all this. Trust yourself. Listen to that voice. Remember, blood tests are only guidelines. It's more important to see the person. I have seen normal blood tests and the patient has thyroid symptoms. Sometimes they can actually test normal on my machine too, but I will always look to the patient first and not rely on testing. A good laboratory report is a cold comfort to a patient whose symptoms remain unchanged. So we're going to talk a little bit more about requesting a full thyroid panel. But the trouble is the values or the reference ranges are at least 30 to 40 years old, and the labs and the doctors cannot even agree. So blood tests can show normal. Go by signs, go by symptoms. We'll talk a little bit more about this on the next one. This is a thyroid panel. So what the doctors do is they use the TSH as the gold bow standard. It is not the most important part. It is important, but it's not the most important. But some doctors will only go by the standard, and that's all they do to check for a thyroid. This is not correct. You have an action hormone, you want to check your T3, and this is an action hormone, and you want to get your T4, which is your cruise hormone, which stays in your body for about 8 days. You want to get that checked and make sure that they're within the right parameters. And then another 2 tests are your thyroid antibodies. And that's really important if you suspect that might be something going on in your body. In fact, many hypothyroid cases have Hashimoto's or Graves'. And all the thyroid antibodies indicate how the immune system is dealing with the situation. So what we're going to do now is we're going to just move into, we're just going to show some blood tests that we can also ask, because these are nutritional biochemistry that the thyroid depends on to be restored. So we can ask for a vitamin D. Listen, if that's only the panels you do from the T3, T3 and 5, that's good enough. But if you want to just take it a little bit deeper, you can go in and check your vitamin D. If you're having thyroid problems, you will have high cholesterol, and usually that means a deficiency of vitamin D. It's a woman's steroid. Vitamin B12. Another thing we see with thyroid cases is a lot of anemia. So it's not just about treating with iron. You've got to check your ferritin. You've got to check your B12. Now the homocysteine is just a really light test to see how the liver is doing. That's what I just check it for. If it's high, then I know there's a problem. Cortisol is to treat your adrenals, and that can be tested by the blood. I'll talk about that, blood or saliva. I'm not going to talk about the DHEA, but there is an RT3, and this will tell me if your hormones are actually breaking down in the liver. And then there's the ferritin, which is another form of iron that works with the B12, and then iron itself. It is very important to keep your own health, keep your records at all times. It's your health, your records, and your right. This saves time, and it just can keep a little portfolio. So if you're refused, you really need to change your doctor. If you think you're having trouble swallowing or feel a swelling or suspect nodules, request a simple ultrasound and then take it from there. Biopsy totally is an option, okay, but it can cause trauma. And if it needs to be done, that's because they suspect it might be what they call hot nodules. But whatever it is, don't panic. Or they will try to radiate it for testing, and that's absolutely irreversible and just kills off more tissue. So you need to be by this lady on the right there and just put your hands on your hips. You don't say, can I, would I? You go, this is what I want. And if your thyroid levels are raised, do ask questions or do your own research. A little knowledge can go a long way. There are many options or alternative medications. If you find that your doctor may get flustered when you're asking questions about thyroid because he doesn't specialize, maybe there's somebody else, another doctor, who might have an interest in that field. The one-size-fits-all T4 medication is such a poor option. Desiccated thyroid is another more natural solution. It's not patented, so it's ignored. Please get second or third opinions to find out more, and here's some websites that I can refer you to that are quite reliable. I'm going to meet Maddie now. So meet Maddie, a 24-year-old student. Maddie noticed swelling on her throat area and it felt lumpy on swallowing. She went to the doctor and within 24 hours had her thyroid biopsied. Unfortunately, Maddie's thyroid overreacted to the biopsy and developed more swelling. Her father rang me that night. I did not know Maddie at this stage, told me what happened and that they were going to take out her thyroid the following day. I begged and I pleaded that he seek other advice first. I knew her tissue was just traumatized. The next day, Maddie actually ended up not having the operation. It was her decision. Once the swelling came down, she came to see me. And a year later, we tested her on the Thyroflex and we did some supplements. A year later, her thyroid it didn't take a year, but it is still normal and has returned to its normal size, safeguarding her hormones, her fertility, safeguarding everything. And she says she feels really, really good. This is the Australian Thyroid Foundation Gold Bow Day highlights the increase in thyroid cancer, with the most recent research from 2008 stating thyroid cancer had increased by 84% in women and 40% in men over the previous 10 years. That means that in Australia, 1 in 8 women will be touched by thyroid cancer. Now, let's find out why does it stop working, okay? So we're just going to do a quick overview. These are things that really interfere with our thyroid, and we live in a chemical world, unfortunately, these days. We're going to talk about the liver's play in this part, or could it be too much estrogen, which is one hormone? It could be viruses. We can talk about cortisol now. We're going to talk about stress. We're going to go through the step-by-step. There's nutrient deficiencies. And then there's a little miscellaneous section that I've actually added on because it is about the soya products. So let's have a move on. So, you know, we live in a day and age of chemicals all around us with all the planes flying around. We're actually finding some of those in our water and our air, our birth control, all our medication. These all have carriers called bromides in them because they have to be slow release. I see a lot of drug spots in people's eyes when I do iridology. It's in our medication, it's in our pesticides, on our fruits and our vegetables, it's in our drinking water, it's in our toothpaste. It's even in our baked goods because they used to use iodine years ago, but now it's just cheap to use a chemical, and that will keep the shelf life going. So it's pretty much in a lot of things: plastic bottles, heavy metals, radiation. These are also really bombarding the body. All of these, even like a new car, you know, when you step in a car and you've got that really plastic smell, that is called a xenoestrogen, and that will affect your thyroid. Sometimes people can work out you need to air that car open and get rid of the chemicals. So these chemicals affect our water, our air, our food, and eventually it's in our blood, breast milk, and our babies. We're going to talk about this liver now. So the liver is the bouncer of your body. It's a real hub exchange, okay? Your thyroid hormones get converted here. But if there's interference of too many chemicals or viruses that are active or too much estrogen, there's a slow conversion and it creates a backup. This is what I was talking about, the RT3. So normally it's quite a major highway. It should be working about 100 Ks, being it is really efficient. But you know what, with all these external influences, it can actually slow down to about 55 K, which really doesn't help. So it has so many vital functions. It is also clean up and mop up. It converts the foods that you are eating into glycogen fuel for the brain. Symptoms can be brain fog, bloating, no appetite, weight gain. Signs are a liver roll around the rib cage, just around the bottom. And as I said, the RT3 is to see the livers converting. This will cost about $85 in Australia. Well worth it if you're suspicious. What stops it working? Well, girls, you know what, we're fairly familiar with our progesterones and our estrogens and testosterones, and this goes for men as well, but mainly as women. You know, these little adrenal glands, they're also responsible for our blood pressure, and they convert sugars to glycogen. But if you've got too much estrogen that's coming out, so if you've got an imbalance in your hormones, okay, especially with the estrogen, we're looking at polycystic ovaries, fibroids, and later on we're going to talk about how this is the most fantastic place that postmenopausal zest is acquired from here. But we're mainly looking at what the estrogen blocking up the liver, and when it does those liver pathways, that's called methylation. The thyroid and adrenal have a very close relationship. Therefore, treating adrenals is of the utmost importance for thyroid recovery. And hey, that's my own quote, but it's true. So we also have virus issues here. So One of the most common things I hear is, I got glandular fever and I've never felt like I've recovered. This is just a few. But if I've got thyroid problems, your immune system is suppressed, and what happens is the virus just have a great party, okay? They never deactivate. So you've got to rebuild your immune system. And if you can test for an Epstein-Barr early antigen test. And here's a little from Isabella Wentz. The reactivated virus has the potential to induce the production of thyroid antibodies, and it's been implicated in many debilitating autoimmune systems. In other words, if you're feeling low, you've got thyroid problems, your immune system is always and constantly challenged. So this is my favorite. Okay, so we're going to come back to the adrenals again, because they're not only just responsible for your hormones, they're responsible for so many hormones. It's just going to blow you away. But the main one that it does, it has, if we get into fright, we have that problem that we run away, but there's a secondary chemical, and that's called cortisol. Now, cortisol is a really good thing. Without cortisol, we would not get active in the day. It needs to come in, clock in early in the morning, and then it sustains us, and then gradually drops off, switches off, and then it comes into our night hormones. So if it doesn't switch off, sometimes, many times in fact, when we stress, the cortisol just forgets to switch off, and it leaves us feeling that tired and wired feeling. So ongoing stress can create too much cortisol, and then eventually no cortisol, maybe chronic fatigue. You can have symptoms like overwhelm, irritability, disturbed sleep, reaction to smaller things, anxiety. Foods can't be broken down here, and this can lead to a leaky gut. So this is where we need to think about ashwagandha, one of my favorite herbs that really helps just nurture your cortisol to come down and start allowing the other hormones to come up. So you can see your skin problems, your rashes, it's amazing. Your anxiety, your sweats, now you know where they come from. Very important. And this area needs to be really well looked after, because postmenopausal zest and andropause use hormones from here. Now, if we go into a terrible menopause, this is one of the reasons why. Okay, so you have stress hormones which increase or decrease your cortisol, and then it becomes inflammatory. The skin rashes, chronic fatigue, emotions, the coffee stains on your skin, that's coming here from your adrenals. Then it has to filter the salt as well in your body and control your blood pressure. So and also your cravings, or you may have fluid gain or puffiness. And we've talked about the estrogen, progesterone, and then also it's in charge of processing your protein, your fats, and your sugar. If it can't process with your cortisol, it's going to your insulin, your symptoms are weight gain and decreased gut absorption. There is no more creative force in the world than the menopausal woman with zest. So what we're going to look at now is, nutritional biochemical deficiencies. These are also very essential. Thyroid and breast care, they just go hand in hand. So that's why I put that picture there. But these are really required for good thyroid function and immunity. So iodine, vitamin C, magnesium, B12, vitamin D, selenium. I'm more interested in the zinc than the copper, and B6. We will talk later about this. What stops it working? Things like soya products, it's only in the Western world that marketing has just gone crazy with it. And I really resent any soya products coming my way. I used to have a lot of them thinking they were good, but they are what we call goitrogenic. They actually stop the thyroid function, just like the chemicals. If you have a thyroid problem, I was having kale smoothies every day, and then I'd be asleep 2 hours later. Same with cabbage. So you can eat these products cooked, but just not raw. And most of the time, they're okay if you're feeling healthy. A lot of soft drinks contain bromides that interfere with thyroid function. It actually stops the thyroid from functioning and collects other toxins in your body. Artificial sweeteners contain aspartamines, and this actually causes toxins in the brain, which just simply adds to the inflammation that's already there. And very often, we can be eating but without absorbing because of a leaky gut. So we can be hungry, we can eat things, but they don't actually break down into a proper nutrition. And then we have bad fats. You've heard all about the bad fats. And this is where they process in the liver, and the liver just really hates bad fats. It will just load it into your arteries. And so dehydration. You know, this is really important because water is a major chemical solvent to exchange thousands of hormones and chemicals to neutralize toxins. So it acts as a buffer zone. Now we're going to talk about the 3 pillars of health. Very important. The first one we're going to talk about is sleep, food, and biochemicals. Now, to me, the most important thing, and I really cannot treat anybody without their getting their sleep foundation right. It's so important to park your body in your bed garage every night to recharge. What it does is that you damage many things during the course of the day. So when you go to sleep, the body's job is to come in and start repairing that. In between that, it's downloading the brain. Okay? And then after that, it's restoring your body to give you the energy and the hormones to face the next day. And your system is designed progressively, so there's about 8 systems in your body, 8 sets of different processes or organs. And what happens, it goes from one organ at a time. When that is satisfied and there's a nice little chemical that's made, it passes on to the next process. And so goes on and so goes forth. You know, a broken night's sleep will never repair or restore any health. Sometimes I wonder if I should have opened a sleep clinic instead of a thyroid clinic. So, you know, weight gain is going to be a really bad side effect because the ghrelin that burns fat cannot be made. Signs are waking up and you cannot return to sleep. And this is when your sleep hormones, your serotonins, your melatonins, or your GABAs are disrupted. So for this exercise, no blue lights, no digital wear 2 hours before sleep. Excuse me. Burning soft yellow lights. You know, like your Himalayan, without sleep hormones and good chemicals cannot be repaired. And this is quite interesting. I found this from the foundation. It's time for people to make sleep a priority. 18% of adults regularly sleep less than 6 hours per night, and 20% suffer chronically from poor sleep. Half of these from sleep disorder and the remainder from poor sleep habits. Please forgive me, I'm going to just knock off for a few seconds. Just having a bit of a drink of water there. So, the cost to the Australian public is $5.1 billion a year. It's an epidemic of sleep problems. The cost to the economy in car accidents, road rage, sick days. Oh, forgive me, I've got something in my throat. Hold on. Apologies for that. I hope you didn't have to hear that. You know, poor judgment, marriage breakups, depression, weight gain are just adding to the health costs of the economy, including diabetes. Pretty scary, really. We're going to talk about foods, one of my favorite. Have you noticed how many food fads or fact that so many foods are being demonized or capitalized on? Well, I've probably been a lot of the labels in the past, but honestly, you just got to keep these things simple. And basically, I like the KISS principle. Keeping things basic and simply at the same time increasing your alkalinity. So the ideal foods for blood should be 80% alkaline and 20% acidity. And that's a good principle just to apply on a daily basis to your foods. Disease can only thrive in acidity. Acidity leads to gut disease or leaky gut. You can see the picture on the right. Okay, what happens is that the membranes in the little gut become quite thin, and then the protein starts leaking out of that, and then toxins will go and affect the joints first, and then it just moves slowly around. So flexi foodism is what I practice, basically embraces all of these food labels and ideas, taking the best out of all the food fads, making them suit our lifestyles and the seasons. Flexifoodism is about making vegetables and fruit your base because fiber is so important to carry out waste and to form our own gut bacteria tribe. Everybody has their own personal colony. So adding alkaline cereals like quinoa flakes or buckwheat, seeds and nuts, good oils are very important for the nervous system. Having meat as a side dish and not the focus of the plate, and only a few times a week. It's important to eat to your body type. It's important to eat with the seasons. You'll notice that root vegetables are underground and summer vegetables are above ground. It's important to eat raw in summer and eat more cooked in winter. Does this make sense to follow nature? So an alkaline example of an alkaline day is quinoa flakes with berries, nuts and seeds, coconut oil. Lunch, steamed veggies with sexy salsa sauce, and dinner, a miso vegetable soup. This is really a high nutrient profile. The doctor of the future will give no medicine but will instruct the patient in the care of the human frame, in diet and in the cause and prevention. Now, tell me, do you feel nourished and satisfied in your belly after eating? Can you remember enjoying your most favorite, yummiest meal and how it felt so satisfying in your belly because it was nourishing? Or do you eat on the run and whatever just to fill the gap? Eating on the run will spike your insulin, especially between 2 and 4 p.m. when we want to grab something sweet or coffee or carbs. This is when we need to have slow-release foods at lunchtime because it's fuel for the brain and to nourish the body tissues, feed your adrenals, and satisfy the insulin. So these things are easy. It's winter time here, so these are really easy foods to incorporate. It does take preparation, but it just means that you cook extra. It's very easy to do. Eat lots of casseroles because all the juice comes into the sauce itself, broths, good fats, slow-release foods, plant-based, alkaline grains, and just have a meatless 2 to 3 days a week just for a start. Now we're going to talk about some specific foods which are just, they're going to satisfy the body and create your biochemical pathways for the thyroid and the adrenals. Now seaweed is a very favored fuel for the thyroid because it contains iodine, which is required for function, immune system, for brain and breast care. So this is a really good way to start. Then we have our pumpkin seeds. Just love the pumpkin seeds. You know, a third of a cup of pumpkin seeds a day can pick up your zinc levels in 2 weeks. And it's also got essential fatty acids and it will expel parasites. Oh, love it. Now, Brazil nuts contain selenium. Now, selenium is an absolute must, without a doubt, because when it breaks down in the liver, the selenium converts into another chemical and it breaks down that T4 into the T3, highly essential. However, it's probably one of the products that I'm very wary of because if you take it too long, over too long a period, years and years, it can be toxic. So what you do, I have a preference to use it in food because it's in a whole little capsule anyway. So 3 of those a day will start building up your selenium. And then we have Himalayan or Celtic salt. Now, one of the things I love, this is very alkalizing. This is fantastic to support your adrenals because it has 80 minerals. And guess what? All those steroids that are made in your adrenals, they need the salt, the minerals in the salt. They are made out of minerals. This is fantastic if for stubborn constipation. I will always start at this. It alkalizes your blood. There's so many things, and I will give a talk about that later. In fact, there's a bonus, so look out for the bonus. And then we have broccoli. So remember when I said about how the liver pathways can get blocked with lots of estrogen? What you want to do is clear those pathways away. And broccoli contains a chemical called DIM. It's a really long name. But it methylates those pathways. It's like a leaf blower, and it just gently, the sulfur inside actually just gently opens up these pathways. I love broccoli soup. And then we have a miso. Now this is the only time I would suggest any soya because it's fermented. Anything fermented is good for your belly. You've got to teach your belly to make its own probiotics. It's slow release and it will increase your bowel bacteria. It's fantastic for good weight balance, and it supports your insulin, and it supplies the gut bacteria. And then finally, another one of my favorite is coconut. Now this has a very cooling effect on the body, and your liver just loves it. Add it to smoothies. This has helped me for my brain to recover. It's the short chain fatty acids. Add it to anything. Even at the end of cooking, just pop it in. It's fantastic. The liver loves good fats, and it's great for brain function, skin, hair, and nails. Supports the adrenals, and it aids your insulin. It just slows it down. So just quickly, I'm going to go over what happens with biochemical support. You know, iodine has to be an external fuel source. It's to prevent cretinism, mental disabilities, fertilities, breast care, ADHD. Most importantly, it converts the T4 to a T3. The vitamin C is another exquisite pathway which is required, and the adrenals use a lot of vitamin C, and so this will keep your immune system up and support adrenals. Magnesium, it's really required for so many chemical reactions in your body. Will assist in sleep and brain fog. B12, mandatory if you're having anemia. Brain fog, it helps the stomach absorb, so it's good for digestion. I've talked about vitamin D. It's so important for your immune system.